Hi everyone, this is Art Smalley, President of Art of Lean Incorporated, and today on behalf of the Lean Enterprise Institute, we're going to do a series of short video clips, each one about the 7 classic forms of waste from the Toyota production system. Stick around, I think you'll enjoy them. Moving along to waste number 7. At least for me, I put it 7th because it's a bit of an oddball or odd duckling. And I'll explain in my intellectual criticism of the 7 waste framework why I think that is in a follow-up video. But it's the waste of processing or the waste of over-processing. There's 2 ways you got to look about it. Okay, one is the simple over-processing, doing something beyond special requirements, beyond customer requirements, beyond the required level of value add. And that can be, over quality, over specification, over production, over processing in some way, shape, or form. And here's a simple example, and my friends in the Navy might appreciate this. I've got this steel ball here, and I'm going to put it through this machine and make the nut we were doing before. But before I do that, let's say I polish the steel ball. Okay? I polish the steel ball and get it clean. Then I put it in the machine, cycle it, operate it, and make my part. And the question is, do you need to clean it before you put it through the machine? I guess in the Navy they call this polishing the cannonball, and that's a form of waste because if you're going to shoot it through the cannon, what's the point in polishing it in the first place? I guess that's an old naval adage or something like that that got shared with me once. And it's a legitimate form of over-processing because going through the machine, it doesn't need to be clean, potentially. Maybe you do need to clean it in some cases in order to not have a jam or to make the right quality component come out. But in other cases, maybe you don't need to clean it before it goes through the machine. Okay? It's a legitimate question. What level of cleanliness, what level of processing needs to be there? And that ties back to a great understanding of customer standards and requirements and what's really required, and not going beyond them when you don't need to, because going beyond them adds time, adds difficulty, adds processing, adds cost in some way, shape, or fashion. And you need to look at that very carefully. Now, another way of looking at processing is not just over-processing, and this gets lost in the translation, unfortunately. In the original Japanese, it wasn't over-processing. It was emphasized that it's also the act of processing itself. Is the act of processing itself the correct way or best way? And here's a household example I can use to make in the video. I've got a piece of paper, and I've got my wife's steak knife, and hopefully she never sees this, but I can actually cut paper using the steak knife, and it cuts through it pretty sharp because I like sharpening knives. It's a hobby of mine. I have a lot of sharp knives in my house. But that's not really the best way to cut. It did make a straight cut in this way, but I can't control it. I can't go in straight lines and do fancier things with it. If you want to cut paper, of course, the proper tool, way of processing it, even freehand, I make a better cut with scissors, and you can go up a grad, from this and have the lever types and slicing types and more advanced types of ways to cut paper. Okay, go crazy with lasers and cutting action and things like that. But the active processing itself, you have to look at sometime and say, is this the best way? Is this the most efficient, effective way to do it at our cost structure? And often it depends. How do you want to process something is a fundamental question you got to think about during the product development and production engineering stage. And if you don't, sometimes it gets into production and you wind up processing it in a way that's inefficient and causes a lot of cost, a lot of waste, even if it's not over processing. Just the style of processing you chose to do is not the most efficient. So again, this is 7th, but sometimes it's a huge form of waste and needs to be looked at carefully over time with a careful understanding of what customer requirements are. That is the 7th form of waste. That concludes our video on the 7 types of waste, or at least the 7 classical types of waste that were in the Toyota production system from the 1960s, 70s, and 80s and onward up until this time. Of course, your organization might have changed the name slightly. You probably order them differently or have an acronym associated with them for easier thinking. I just presented them in the fashion that I thought about them, and I think I probably learned them at the Toyota factory where I worked at in Japan. But there's no perfect way to explain them, and there are some intellectual shortcomings, to be frank, in the framework. I'm going to save that for a follow-up video. And no, I don't mean I got to add the 8th waste and that saves everything. It just introduces another layer of problems. But as a starting point, the 7 wastes are a good way to challenge people to think about again, back to their motion, their daily job and the work they perform. And is that work value add? Is it incidental and required in the current state of the process? Or are there things truly wasteful and unnecessary that we do? And the spirit of this, again, was in the 1950s, 60s, 70s, 80s in Toyota was catch up to the West and improve their levels of labor and capital productivity and overall company profitability by subtraction. Elimination of waste, which comes back to that JM framework. Eliminate the unnecessary details, eliminate, combine, rearrange, simplify, and make things better. And if you can engage people mentally in their job with problem solving, continuous improvement, and the actions they perform, I think it makes for a better, healthier workplace and management relationship set of structures for all of us. So I hope that helped, and good luck in your improvement journey.